Michael Moran is the CEO and Chief Research Officer at Transformative Risk Analysis. He is with us from San Diego, California. Michael, thank you very much for being with us. Status quos are being challenged right around the world. And these protests, while they are very different, as we just showed a snippet of that, they have very common themes, where there is inequality, corruption, push for political freedom. What is your take, Michael, on what we're seeing?
I think you're seeing a kind of unraveling of the status quo that was put in place after the Cold War ended, large part driven by the United States in a very kind of, very kind of unilateral burst of energy to push through things like free trade and push through, pro-democracy agendas overseas, a series of interventions that went very badly. But each of these protests has a very specific, eccentric, local cause as well. All of them beginning to look as though there's a lot of fear about the unraveling of institutions, the corruption that seems to be endemic in a lot of countries, and that goes across the developed and the undeveloped world, and across, questions of sovereignty. In Barcelona, it's about independence for Catalonia. In Hong Kong, of course, it's about maintaining some kind of autonomy from the Communist Party in the mainland. So there's a lot of very specific stuff going on, but overall what we're seeing is the continuing unraveling of the world that we thought we inherited after the Cold War ended.
But, Michael, I was speaking to a guest the previous hour, and I found it fascinating looking at these protests right around the world. Many of these emotions, these feelings, the anger that we've been seeing, they have felt that they've kept a lid on that for some time. So what has changed to actually see people go in the streets in large numbers, be it Lebanon, Hong Kong, Catalonia? What exactly has changed to actually push people, feel compelled to take to the streets in such large numbers?
Again, these are, sometimes it's very specific. You had the largest demonstration in years in Britain last weekend about Brexit. By and large, what I think is happening is people are pulling back, taking a look at the world that they thought they were going to be living in. They're dissatisfied with the level of income inequality. That speaks to corruption in society, whether it's a rigging of the system or whether it's outright corruption, which is being alleged in places like Bolivia. And that is sparking some real anger. People had kind of bought into this market liberal economic dream of globalization. And now with the United States, the chief author of this thing, pulling out of it, very abruptly when Donald Trump became president, they're worried. They see the U.S. and China going at it over trade, and these lesser nations are thinking, we're just going to get left in the dust. We have no power over this.
You've mentioned U.S. policy. You now have just mentioned President Trump. How much are they looking at President Trump and his policies and fearful of what may come? And is there some sort of inspiration from each other, let's say, where be it Hong Kong, Barcelona taking lessons from Hong Kong here?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly with Barcelona and Hong Kong, there's a similarity there. Obviously, the Spanish state is not looming over the people in Barcelona the way that Hong Kong might fear Beijing would come in. But, the fact that the United States has, in recent years, started pulling back from its commitments, the most dramatically, of course, the Kurds just this month in Syria. But, the denigration of NATO, the way that South Korea and Japan have been, hinted that perhaps we'll pull American troops out. These things make other countries very worried. Hong Kong never had any guarantees from the U.S., but it must have felt at least it would get some spiritual and rhetorical support, and it's got basically none of that.
Yeah, and the most important thing here, of course, is freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Although, having said that, many people have been hurt and many have died. So a lot of these protests have become very nasty indeed. Michael Moran, thanks very much for joining us. Appreciate it.